Okay, so I decided to take a video here on setting up the timing on my Polaris RZR 900 because earlier I wanted to do it and I could literally find no video other than one guy, and he had the engine out of the RZR and had it all apart. So he was using the split in the case. There's a split right in there where the case splits. So he had like everything apart, yet he had this part, this cover here thingy off, and then he'd line his mark on the flywheel up with that split. Well, I didn't want to take the engine out of the machine, which I've ended up having to do it then at the end anyway. Because I was replacing the pistons and the rings and stuff. So anyways, finally I found one video, and I don't know, I've tried different times since to Google it or look it up on YouTube, and I can't find it again. So they might have had it named different enough that it don't come up when you try to Google it up for timing on it. So anyway, so I decided, okay, I'm going to make a video how this works. I'm going to, that way, hopefully it'll help somebody else out. Possibly you if you're watching this video. So anyway, so if we look here, there's this hole right here on top. Okay, that hole's on top of the flywheel casing. So right here, this you'll see this sensor right here in the hole. So what you want to do, that sensor is in that hole. So what you want to do is loosen that hole. There's just that one bolt. You want to take that bolt out, remove the sensor, and I just just put the bolt slightly back in so I don't lose it. And then there's you look down in that hole. Let me grab my light here. Let's see if I can find it here without. Usually I have. The last time I had the exhaust off, but this time I was doing it without because I didn't want to go through all that stuff again. Okay, so let me zoom up on this hole here. Now, if you look, you can see that mark in the back side of the hole there. Like, let me find it. Back here on the back side, right on this side of, like right in front of my fingernail, there's a mark on back in there where, see if I can find it, or shine in there differently. There you can see the mark better, yeah. That mark on the back side of it toward the engine. Okay. That mark needs to be center with that hole, which it just happens that, let me get my finger down here. This thing right here, where I got my finger on, it just happens that that thing is right center with the hole. So I always line my mark up with that thing. As you can see, I got my mark lined up. I'm taking this video from a little bit from an angle so it don't look like it's quite lined up, but if you look down from the top, see if we can do that. Where am I at? There we go. Okay. If you look down from the top, you'll see my mark is lined. You can just barely see the line at the edge there, or my mark inside on the flywheel. But yeah, you can see it's lined up perfectly with that side little thing on the engine there, side thing that I was. The mark is like right there in front of my finger, and you can see it's lined up nicely with this thing right here. So might want to check, but I figure your engine will be the same way. But yeah, that puts the mark right in the center of the hole there. Now, another thing we need to do, and I always like to take my spark plugs out there, both of them, so you don't have all that compression. It's a whole lot easier to turn it over until you get this mark exactly where it belongs. And then over here, you want to take the cover off on the clutches so you can get a hold of the primary clutch. This clutch right here, it's on the motor, so you can turn that to turn it till you get to the mark where you want it. And it can be kind of tricky to do it. I finally managed to like reach over with my fingers and roll it over and watch the hole at the same time, even though it was kind of rough. So anyway, so now here we got the top cams. Here's the intake and here's the exhaust. So you see right there's the exhaust going out. And the carburetor's on this side. So you want to make sure, whatever you do, if you take these cams off, you want to make sure you put them back exactly the way they were. Like you want to mark it like this, the exhaust or intake cam, and that's the exhaust cam. And these parts here, you can. I think there's only one way they'll fit on anyway. If you try to put this one over here, it wouldn't fit. But still, I might like to mark them. Like this one, I got IN for intake and EX for exhaust. And like there's the buckets in there. Let me show you here. Right here. These are all buckets that go down over, like, okay, your valve comes up through the valve stems, like right in there. And then there's a spring that goes over there, and you've got these little tiny things. I got some of those over here in a box, the old ones. Like here's my old valves, okay? And there's get a couple. There's these little thingies here. And that slide, there's two halves of them that slide down like inside the spring, and then when the spring comes up, they fit in tight, and they lock it right into that groove. So anyway, so after that spring and everything's installed, these things go right over top, and they slide right down in there. So anyway, yeah, so each one, oop, no, I put them, they're real picky, you gotta be just right or they won't slide in. So anyway, when you take them buckets off, you definitely want to mark every single one and make sure they go exactly back where they were. Because right there is where I learned my lesson. I didn't realize there was a difference, and I just took them out. Well, guess what? When I went to put it back in, everything's were all different, which, well, first thing, before I put them back in, I got these new buckets with, because I just got done putting a new head in because my valve guides were leaking and stuff, and I decided to just put it all new in. So anyway, so I didn't realize how picky that stuff was. I just figured, well, them buckets are made to fit, and I put those in. Well, guess what? They were way too loose, so it sounded like a fork going down the road. When I started it up, I thought it was kind of noisy. And then when I started going down the road, it sounded like an old Ford, like going down the road. I'm like, holy mackerel, what's going on? So I went back on YouTube and I looked and looked. Well, there's another thing they wouldn't put on. They kept talking about the shimming, but they wouldn't say nothing about it. Finally, after spending a long time and getting irritated, I figured out that you can get shims that go inside here. So that's what it is. The other old cover or buckets already, they call these things buckets, already had the shims in there, like in the center there where that little knob's at. Excuse me. I guess your shim pops over that or something. But you got to know exactly what size shims you need to get, and it sounded like a pain. So luckily, I took the old buckets, and after spending I don't know how many hours, I finally figured out where each one fit to be in spec on there. And then on the exhaust, I got them all working except two of them were just a little too tight. They weren't in spec. So I decided to cheat a little bit. What makes it too tight was that little button in the center there on them ones where it was a little too long. So I went and I'll show you the tool. I decided this thing's going to work one way or the other, and some of them professionals might kind of frown about it, but hey, it's my machine and it did the trick. So I had this little Dremel, and I suddenly remembered I had this. I was trying to think what kind of a file I would have that I could file it off, and all of a sudden I remembered I had this, and I thought, man. So I checked it out. Sure enough, here was this little grindstone. It had this little grindstone that fit in here, and let me get this thing to focus. So anyway, yeah. So I ended up just taking that, and I grind just a little bit off, just a little bit, and then I put it in, and then if it was still too tight, I did a little bit more, and finally I had them just exactly where I wanted them. So you had to be real careful that you don't take too much off if you do that. And if they would have been too loose, then it would have been too bad. Then I would have had to find me shims and figure out what I needed and all that good stuff. So anyway, long story short, I got it fitted, and now we're ready to get the timing. So like you saw, I got the mark down there on the crankcase exactly where I want it. So now there's these cams. So Polaris, just another one of their rip-off ways to get all your money. Like, they have a tool. These two cams have a slot in the back. As you can see, I got my tool already slid in there. So Polaris has a tool. They want to make you buy their tool for this, and like the rest of their parts and stuff, it was not cheap. So I'm like, bullshit, I ain't gonna spend all that money to pay them for that stupid tool. So I found this flat piece of angle iron that just happened to be perfect thickness. It fit just snuckle in them grooves. So I used it. So yeah, and then you put that in the groove so both cams cannot move. They can't move. Now this cam over here, this is the intake cam. You're gonna have to take a wrench or something and pull just a little bit. Let's see, counterclockwise, right? Just a little bit that way. And there's a place right down there where you can get a hold of it with the wrench. Both of them have that, but this is the one that you'll need. So yeah. And, well, there's another thing. You want to make sure that your cams, like your cam loops, need to be pointed out. The exhaust and intake, both of them need to be pointed out just like they are there. When you pop that tool in there, you don't want to turn them in, or you got it done wrong then. And then you're asking for problems. So yeah, turning both loops out. Pull this one a little until that pops in the groove. The tool there, and then you're ready to come up here and do those little gears up here. So we'll get to that next. Okay, so we're ready to get these things installed. The gears. Okay, so this is going to be the intake gear. I mean, both gears are the same, but you see there's an E there, there's an E there, there's I and I. So what you want to do, when you put this thing in, these eyes need to be lined up with the top of your case there. Show you here. So I got this piece of wire on here. I got this piece of wire to hold my chain from falling down in. Actually, maybe I want to leave that wire on there again. Okay, so just take your gear, and you want to make sure you don't drop it down in if you possibly can, because that kind of ain't no fun trying to fish the thing out. Okay. Let's see. I think I might have it pretty close right there. Yeah. So, hold it in place. And it's lined up with the hole right there. So you want to get this one little bolt started in there. Okay, so I'm going to take this wire off. If I'm careful, it ain't going to fall down in. And the wire's just in my way anyhow. So, okay, so we got that one in there. And we got the two marks with the eyes lined up with the case right there. That's what we want. Now over here, we use the E. Remember, there's two eyes, and then the E is on. So there, on the exhaust valve, we use the E and line it up with that case. So that being said, let's see, my little bolt there. Okay, take the chain, and another thing, you want to you'll want to back the chain tensioner out, of course, before you can do this. I'll point that out here in a little bit. Okay, so I'm way off right there. Let me move it a couple of links. I'm still off probably about one link. Try that. Yeah. And that looks real good right there. I mean, that lines up perfect. So, okay. Try to hold that from falling down. And get our bolt started. Okay. Alright. So, what we're going to do is we're going to tighten. Well, snuck these bolts up anyway. Well, you know what? I might wait a little bit for right now. And they're tight enough to hold our gears. So, yeah. Right there, we got it lined up perfect. The E, there's the E there, they're lined up perfect with that. That's what we want, you know. Just pull this chain snuck up here, put this gear in it, and pop it on, and just keep it snuck through there and pop that side on. I don't know what would happen if you keep the back side snuck. All I know is the guy that I watched on YouTube, he had done this side first, but I was kind of thinking, why couldn't you do the front side first, and then if there's a little bit of slack would be on this side where the tightener's at. I don't know. I would just assume that would work too, but I don't know. Okay, so we got them 2 bolts in. So I'm going to put my chain guide on the top there. If I can figure out where I put it. That's what happens when you don't put your things in order. There it is. Okay. So here we got our chain guide, and it goes right in there. I put that on there so it keeps the chain from just for keep it from jumping the link, just keep it more out from jumping the link, I should say. So we'll tighten that down. And actually, I'm just gonna maybe hand tighten it for now. Like that. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and tighten this, and I'll show you that right away while I'm at it. Okay. The chain tensioner. Okay, so the chain tensioner that I was talking about is right here. I just turn it out about halfway, just far enough so I can get my sprockets on. So yeah, that thing is ready to turn in now. You can turn it most of the way in, pretty well all the way in with your hand. And then just take a wrench and just make it nice and snug. You want to make sure you don't over tighten it or you might strip it out. It's just casting here so that we're working with, so we don't want to tear that out. But that wouldn't be a very good day. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and tighten that so I don't forget. And we want to make sure yep, we're still at top dead center. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to take my wrench and finish tightening that. Then I'm going to take my piece off, that plate that is stuck in the back there, take that out. And we're going to crank the engine over till the other 2 bolt holes are up. And then we'll put them holes in, or bolts in, and tighten them down. And then we're ready to put it back together. This plate right here goes over on top there. Part of it goes against the oil choke to hold it from falling off. And of course there's the middle hose is your air mixture hose, and the outside tier for the fuel lines, which are right there. So yeah, now we're gonna turn the engine over, and like okay, this is from a little bit of an angle, but you can see still how those marks are lined up perfectly with the case. The back ones, you can barely see the mark, but yeah. So that's what we want. See, the front one's is the I, the back one's the E. I for intake, E for exhaust. So yeah. So that being said, um, yeah, I'll tighten that tensioner bolt all the way just nice and snug. Now make sure I don't over tighten it. Then I'll pop that piece out back there. We'll turn the engine over till the other holes came up. Like I said, there's two more holes on them sprockets that need bolts in them. So we'll get to that next. Okay, so I got the one little bolt in. I'm going to tighten it up right away and then move to the next. And what we want to do is get your wrench on here so this thing cannot move. You don't want that to turn or you'll liable to make it chumba link. And then you tighten this nuts or bolts up right there. Okay. Oh, my wrench is okay. There we go. Now, the next bolt, crank it a little farther and get that one in. Okay, so we got all the bolts tightened down. I went through and I checked. I made sure I all got all these bolts tight and guide bolts tight. And they all seem to be tight. Like I said, I've took that plate out already and I've turned it over till I could get to the other two holes, and then I put them bolts in and tightened them down. So now I'm ready to put my spark plugs back in. And as you can see, I got some homemade couple up thing here. So that's another Polaris trick for you, I guess. The old head, a thin wall socket would just fit in to get my spark plug, or a thick wall. Well, guess what? The new head, they make that you can't even get in with that no more. So all I had is this little short thin wall. I just happened to find this with some other oddball sockets I had. So, but it was just a short one, and the spark plug needed to stick all through the hole in the socket to get far enough in. I mean, with a ratchet, it wouldn't reach far enough down to hit the whatever part. It would just go like something like that. So I took me a piece of pipe that was no bigger around than the socket, welded it on the socket, took the grinder and made everything nice and smooth, flush with the socket there, welded that piece on the top, and guess what? Got me a spark plug wrench. I don't have to go spend who knows how much for one from Polaris. So now screw this in. I guess I sound like a whiner that don't like Polaris. I like Polaris, but it's just some of their. I don't know. I don't know why they wouldn't make some of this stuff so you can work on it instead of. Well, I guess I don't know. Okay, I don't want to over tighten them either because it'd be a bummer if you strip the threading out on them. So okay. Okay, so there's that, and we're ready to put our rubber gasket back on and put the head on it, and hopefully that'll be the last time we have to take it apart for a long time. So here's our rubber gasket that goes on before the, I call the others the head, but it's the oil pan gasket. So yeah, put this thing in, make sure it's popped right down on, sealing nice, laying in there nice the way it's supposed to. Okay, just like that. Okay, and one last time I want to make sure and everything looks like it's the way it should be. Oh, there goes a bolt out of this dumb thing. Where's that thing going? Make sure you don't loose these things because you will need them. Okay. Fit the cover on where it belongs, like that. Oops, something ain't quite right here. There we go. Now it's where it belongs. And these bolts take a big screw, or a big star bit wrench. I had one of those little plastic things. There's a whole bunch of them with all the different sizes on, and decided to fall apart on me. It's a pain. It was anyway a pain to deal with, so works easier with this thing than just stick a screwdriver through there and turn them tight. I'm not sure. Okay, T40. So it's size T40. I reckon the other ones take that too. I don't know, at least a 12. So I suppose they're, I don't know, I suppose they still make them the same. So I'm just hand tightening them all right now. Then I'll go back and take a screwdriver and tighten them up right. Okay, so I'm going to take a screwdriver, if I can find it, right here. And I'll tighten them up. It's almost too small. I hit another one here somewhere. Well, so I had another screwdriver, but it just sort of mysteriously disappeared, so I'll use this tool here. Just snuck them up nice. There's another thing you want to make sure you don't over tighten, or you might strip something out, and we know that wouldn't be funny. Okay. That one we can turn it a little bit with our hand again now that the others are tight. Okay, so now that that's done, we still got this sensor down here that we need to get in, and we might as well go ahead and get it in place before we forget it. Okay, make sure there's no dirt on it, because we don't need that in this engine. We've got enough problems as it is. Okay, so we got that popped in there. Tighten the screw. Okay, so now we got this plate right here. I just kind of left my hose in there. So we'll need to get it. I got these two bolts started in here. I just always have a habit of putting my bolts just part ways, turn them part way in the hole again. That way I don't forget it or lose them. So we'll put it in place. Just kind of watch that we don't pinch something or tear it. So this hose comes off of the cover, and it goes to the oil container, but it's supposed to stick through this little one hole in here to kind of, otherwise you'd probably be bending it or something. And there's a bracket in that end that holds the other end of that oil container. As you can see, it's moving. It holds